Hi, I'm Jeannette Growler. I'm formerly Jeannette Rivera, class of 2012, and we are in San Diego, California. And my pronouns are she, her. Projects and hobbies are really hard to do when you're a mom, stay-at-home mom. I feel like I don't really have a lot, but recently I've been trying to read a lot more books, specifically on Native American higher ed and just like Native American history, because even though I am Native American, just because you are doesn't necessarily mean you understand and know the history. So that's kind of what I've been doing, trying to read a lot. So I guess reading.
That's a very interesting. No, that's
the easiest thing I could do right
now. I mean, first of all, congratulations on being a mom. But I know that, especially for any moms, it's quite it's a good amount of work. And so I hope that you're able to take care of yourself, at least even in this way. Are there any specific interesting findings you're having as you start reading some of those books? Anything that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, I think what prompted the entire, not prompted the interest, but what sparked it again and to dive more deeply into it was actually, I think, it's been 9 years since I've been at Williams. And even today, I still feel myself reflecting back on that situation and the classes and the environment and kind of how much I was lacking, because I grew up on the reservation, but and I went to Native American schools, but when you go to school in the United States, even if it's on the reservation, you're not focusing on your own tribal history and your tribal culture. And the schools I went to tried to do a really good job of incorporating that, but I think that it was still very much lacking. So Williams reached out to me 2 months ago. The Committee on Diversity and Community reached out to do a Native American alumni little talk. And I realized that I didn't know any other Native American alums. And it's like kind of one of those things where you're like, wait, how did I just realize, like, I don't know anybody? It's hard to find them. And we had this really interesting discussion about how hard it was to find each other and what the whole thing meant and what all of us experienced going through it. And then I started, that struck a match in my brain, and I was like, wow, this is like a really important conversation. And I should really try to learn as much as I can about it. So that way, if I ever get asked again or they have another talk, then I can kind of be more useful. And it also got me inspired for thinking of a future job that I could be the person that is the sort of bridge between the experience and the culture part of it, and then going into an institution like Williams. So that's kind of the motivation for trying to read a whole bunch of books about it. And then it got me excited to possibly go into getting a master's in education or social work. And then it inspired me also to apply for a job back home. So it was kind of interesting how they asked me to do this thing. I did it. I met other students, and then it was just like, wow, this is a huge missing part of higher ed. And why is it taking till 2021 for my school to reach out to me and other people? And I don't have all the answers. So I was like, how do I find these answers? And so now I'm in the middle of reading all these books. Who I am, my identity. A lot of the work that I did before being a stay-at-home mom was on the reservation, the Navajo reservation. And I worked with different nonprofits and a local hospital, working with Native American youth. And some of the things that they focused on and we focused on was lots of trauma healing. So not a part of being Native American, but a huge portion of kids, high percentage of them, are coming from homes with alcoholism, abuse, just historical trauma, the schools are not well, so many different things and factors that are affecting them in being, the potential awesome, amazing kids they could be. So, and suicide prevention was one of the things we did. So we worked with a lot of elementary school kids up to high school and listen to their stories, a lot of sort of similar like this with digital storytelling, and telling them to be proud of their stories, tell their stories, and to really embrace the uniqueness that they have in the world, because there's so few of them, and helping them to heal and overcome all of these different things. And it was very touching and heart work. You know, it's when it's your own community, it's so special because you connect with it, you know the experience, and you just see the potential in all these kids. So that was a huge part of what I did. And then we did a lot of fun stuff too. Like through the hospital, we focused on healthy habits, because Native Americans also have high diabetes and health concerns, and overweight, like, you know, what is it, obesity? So we did a lot of projects aimed towards healthy eating, natural gardening, and getting kids outside to do health and fitness stuff like bike rides, basketball camps, and kind of used the culture, like cultural foods and things, to kind of blend it all together to make it culturally appropriate and useful information that they could easily incorporate into their lives.
Wow, I mean, that's sort of, you know, it's an interesting aspect of some themes around going back to community or your community and trying to, I mean, at least as you've explained it, you know, in some ways also finding your own way and learning more as well. When you talked first about your hobbies and reading the books. Yeah. I'm sure some of those moments can be challenging as well and difficult. Are there any sort of challenging moments in that path that you're comfortable sharing, that any memory or anything that stands out that also shaped you in some ways from that experience?
I think one of the most powerful workshops that I participated in and actually was a leader in was our suicide prevention workshops. And I think part of our culture, Navajo culture, and a lot of cultures is, you know, we shut things in and we don't talk, and you hold all your emotions in. And that's really, really not a great thing to do. But I think all these the Native American students I worked with, you know, there's just so much stuff that you deal with on a daily basis that you don't ever talk about. And just historically, there's just so much trauma that your parents experience, your grandparents experience with like boarding schools and the loss of culture and all these things. So one of the cool things that I grew up learning about and experiencing and people telling me about was sort of a dual world mentality. Like growing up, it's kind of a liminal period system that you're constantly in between being in a more modern United States and then a traditional cultural reservation. So I think these kids struggle opening up extra because their parents and grandparents are kind of from a different culture, a different time period, a different experience. So these kids were growing up, and I grew up with, you know, speaking English. I don't speak our native language, and my mother speaks her native language, and my grandmother doesn't even speak English. So just within a few generations, there's this big gap. So on top of all the trauma and things that are happening with the kids I was dealing with, they just have no one to talk to, because it's kind of hard for your parents to understand what you're dealing with in the modern day kind of world. So back to the suicide prevention workshops, it got very emotional. I mean, kids are opening up probably for the first time in their life about things that they had happened to them at home or at school or in their life. And being from the community, it just, you know, you understand it on a different level, I think, because you have experienced sort of the same things. And it was really heartbreaking to hear these stories. But then also, we were in this weird position where we have to honor and respect these kids' stories and make them feel safe enough to open up to us. But at the same time, if it was something extremely dangerous, then we have to report it. So I feel like on that level of the work, it was really difficult to get the kids to open up first. And then if it was just something extremely necessary for intervention, then it was hard to sort of risk the trust of the kids opening up to get them help, knowing that, you know, offering that help or involving some other person and letting their parents know that they had said this or done that, it's just like a push-pull situation, right? You have these kids who are opening up, and it's so great and amazing to offer them the help, but then they feel kind of like maybe they shouldn't have opened up to you and they should have stayed quiet because now their parents are angry or grandparents or...
And then the other piece, I know you're a gemologist, is that?
I was, yeah.
Well, yeah, tell me a little bit about that. How do you...
So random.
It's okay, but random is good.
Yeah.
What sort of led you into it, and what is it actually? I don't want to sound really naive, ignorant about it.
When I moved to San Diego in 2012, just after graduation, I got married, and we moved to just north of here, Oceanside, and I was really trying to find work anywhere and everywhere, but I was sort of isolated to this location because my husband was here working, and I didn't come out of Williams with a job, so I was really just throwing my resume anywhere I could, and I ended up working at Ross for like 2 months or so, because that's the only place I could really get a job, and I knew it wasn't permanent. I was just like, this is just bringing money in until I can get somewhere else. And then I had a friend who I met on the internet when I was probably like a teenager, like 10, 12 years old, who was just like, an internet friend, which is sort of like a very 2000s thing. Everybody, the internet was new and everybody chatted each other up. So this was a girl that I was friends with on the internet, but not in person. And she lived really close to me. And she worked at the Gemological Institute of America. And we met in person, and we became really good friends in person. And I told her, I'm looking for a job. And she said, oh, my job is hiring, and I'm a diamond grader. And I was like, what in the world is a diamond grader? Because I took one geology class in college, and I was like, I don't know anything about rocks. But she's like, told me it's entry level, you can apply, you can put me down as a referral. So I applied, I got accepted, and I became a diamond grader. And I worked in a lab, basically just looking at diamonds under a microscope all day for 2 years. Local community is hard because I think for the last 6 years I've been sort of consumed in being a mom, because it does take your entire being to be a stay-at-home mom. So some cool things that I've done in my community is my kids are part of a cooperative. So we have a whole collection of moms and their kids, and we sort of did, before COVID, twice weekly meetups where we take our kids all over San Diego County to do like hikes and to learn about different things like language arts or science or a cool like historical place, as much as we could with like 4, 5, 6-year-olds. So that's kind of a cool thing that we did. I, through COVID, helped with the Oceanside Homeless Resource Center. And one of the heartbreaking things about living in San Diego, in California in general, is we have a very high homeless population because the weather is so temperamental and nice. So people can stay here year round without worrying about being cold. So where I live in Oceanside, we have no homeless center, shelters, any resources really for homeless people. They're kind of left to their own devices. So there's a woman in my community who has basically doing like grassroots. She is fundraising 10 grand a month to keep a whole bunch of people in hotel rooms and bringing them resources to try to transition into, housing and jobs and transportation, or getting them back to their hometown communities. So over COVID, I helped with their Christmas wrapping thing because it was a pretty safe thing for me to do. So people donated a whole bunch of gifts, and then I picked up the gifts, took them home, and wrapped them for her so she doesn't have to do all that. And back home through COVID, I think on the reservation, the Navajo reservation was really affected a lot by COVID because of a lot of it was just kind of the perfect storm of things. So they had a really, really rough path and a rough go at it. So I couldn't do much there except talk to my mom and, share information on my Facebook, because a lot of people didn't know that it was such a big deal there. So I tried to bring the news to people on my network, and I had friends donate, and I donated as much as I could to, help elderly people get resources during that time. I had to source hand sanitizer from here in California to send to the reservation, because they have like one grocery store for a 2-hour radius of people living within that one store. So they just had a hard time finding sanitizer, toothpaste. Like, you guys think the toilet paper thing was horrible where you are, like back there when there's only one store an hour from your house for the entire community, it was bad. So those are some things I did in the last year. But I think now that my kids are getting older, and my son is going to be in first grade and my daughter's maybe preschool age, I think once my kids get into school, it'll allow me more freedom to really try to engage more in the community, or volunteer more, or go back to work. I don't know. I've had a lot of time to think about my Williams experience, and for the most part, it was very positive. I got so much out of Williams, just growing as a person and learning and just expanding all the information that I took in. It's just exploded my mind. But I definitely was failed at Williams too. Like I said, if I could go back and do something differently at Williams, I think I don't know that I would have chose it. I think growing into my interest now with Native American education, and Williams has no Native American Studies program. And at the time when I chose it, it was not super important to me, because I felt that I was Native American, so I already know what being Native American is. And as I have gotten older and have really reflected on my younger, more formative years, it's just strikes me how much I don't know, and it is very important to me. So I think that in that way, I wish Williams did have sort of more Native American professors or students who could have helped me, because I feel like a lot of my time at Williams was great, but it was really survival. And I didn't have time to think about all the things that I was lacking or missing. And just like the kids I talked about earlier, it was really hard for me to ask for help and open up about that. So I think that my time at Williams was really I was just doing it. I was surviving. I was, being a resilient student and making my way through it. And I didn't have time to think about, like, actually, I do really want to learn about this, and I should have learned about that. But I mean, overall, it was a great experience, a great place. I made some good friends. But looking back, I do wish maybe I would have done like a Native American studies class, or done my own like tutorial with a teacher.
In many ways.
Yeah, I think one of the great things that helped me survive Williams, going back to that question, was the Latino network, because I am half Puerto Rican. So since I didn't have the Native American community at Williams to help me and give me like home, in a sense, I really clung on to the Latino student union, and I took Latino studies as a concentration, concentration, I almost said minor, a concentration. And I think that also just helped me in so many ways too, because growing up on the reservation, I had really little to no connection with that Latino side, because growing up in a really full Native American community as half was really hard. So I was trying my hardest to be like Native American, and didn't have this other culture side to connect with or learn about. So I think that was also a really cool thing that Williams gave me, was taking the Latino studies classes and really connecting with that part of my heritage and culture and side. And I actually went to Puerto Rico when I was at Williams too for the first time, and met my whole family, which is another whole story. So Williams also helped me to, figure all that stuff out and make a giant leap in visiting Puerto Rico and connecting with my complete other half of my family that I never met in my entire life. very cliche, but my children and my family. My kids, when I got married, my husband and I talked, in the future, what our life would be like with kids. And one of the things that was really important to both of us was having a stay-at-home parent, because we just felt like it's time that you're never going to get back, and why pay someone else to raise our kids for us. So one of the things that we settled on early before having kids was that one of us, probably me, is going to stay home with the kids for like at least the first 3 years of their life, which is now turned into, my son is 6 and I'm still at home. My daughter is 3. But they bring me joy. They are the light of my life. I am obsessed with them. They teach me so much about patience and really, what is it?
There you go.
What is it, Bibby? Did you fall off? Can you put it back on?
No.
What is it?
Talking about your children. Talking about your kids. There you go. That's a beautiful moment, though, in many ways.
Well, even having your own kids, I think it brings those sort of questions of identity to the forefront even more, because you have kids that you're trying to mold into great people, and you can't really do that without a lot of self-reflection on like what was positive about growing up for you, and what kind of things do you want to bring into your kids' lives. Like, where do you want them to live? What kinds of friends do you think they should be around? What are some important things that you would like to pass down, like traditions or culture or language or heritage? And I think those right now are really big conversations that I'm thinking about. And I think maybe the reason why I've kind of been trying to read more about this, and really trying to place myself maybe in the future to be the kind of person, they always say, be the kind of person that you needed when you were that age. And having kids definitely makes that, it gives you inspiration and excitement about life. They're just fun. Like, my kids are awesome. I love being around them, and I don't feel, because I don't work, I don't feel like I'm missing anything in my life, because what more important work is there than your children? Like, I can't be working and then having someone else raise my kids and giving them those experiences and molding them into who they might be. I couldn't let someone else do that very important work. I have the perfect person in mind. Liliana Rodriguez was like instrumental to me surviving Williams, and helping me to understand the experience and embrace the experience and survive the experience. So if I had to think anybody, it would be her. I can't tell you how much time I spent in her office, talking to her about life and classes. She would, look over my papers for me, which is just crazy that she was an administrator at the college, and she would be like, yeah, let me look at your paper, and offer me, advice. And it's just totally different to be a student in high school and not really have that kind of place where you could just walk into the administrator's office, sit down, and be like, oh, let me tell you what's happening in my life right now, or I'm so stressed out. And that was just so important for me to be able to make it through Williams, was being able to have somebody who was like pushing you and helping you and advising you and believed in you. She would tell me, it is really hard, but you could do it. Your whole life has been hard. You have had the wind in your face, is something that she tells a story about, the wind being in your face and you're running a race, and it's easy for everyone else, but you have the wind and a hurricane and rocks in your path, but you're on the same, going the same direction, and you're at the same pace, and your race is much harder. And that was just so inspiring, and just gave me so much faith to be able to do it.
Wow, I know Liliana as well.
Yeah,
and
Lily's just amazing.
I think that that's a beautiful thing,
Yeah,
and
she's great.
I'm grateful for you sharing that those intimate details around that experience, because for some people, they've always found a person, sometimes at Williams, that's outside the classroom to help them out. So shout out to Lily Rodriguez, class of 01.
And Rob.
And Rob Rivas, yeah. I believe they're both 01.
Yeah, they are.
And she worked at the Multicultural Center,
Yeah. What do you need now?
That's fine. He can stay there.
It's okay. He can be in it.
Well, so thank you so much for your time. As we wrap up this conversation, are there any last pieces of advice or anything else you'd like to share with the community?
I mean, it's interesting. I just did a job interview recently, like a few weeks ago, and one of the questions they asked me was, how would you define success? And I think this is really pertinent to the idea that you guys are doing right now. Is most people, when they think of a successful Williams alum, they would say, Francis, mask.
My mask.
Oh, you have sand in it. Why are you putting sand in it? Here. Sorry.
That's all good.
Just come and hand me your mask. Go.
Let's see, just making sure. Yep.
What was I saying?
The idea of
success, yeah.
Yes. So you were at an interview, and this question.
So they asked me that. Well, it was really appropriate for the job, because they were looking for like an alumni success. Like basically, they're looking for somebody to help the students get into college and be the person for them that continue to talk to them and help them at college, because these colleges don't have these people. They don't have strong Native American programs and things. So basically, the job is to help the kids get into school, help them figure out good essays, kind of college admissions-y things, like getting them there, and then also supporting them once they're there and through the system. So that way they can matriculate and graduate and be successful and have somebody have their back that they can talk to. So they asked, what did you think of? It's a college prep school. So they asked, what do you think? How do you define success? And this idea of a successful Williams person is, Williams people are just crazy. The things that they do. Like, I think all my friends from Williams are doctors or have doctorate degrees, and they're like the top of whatever they do. So that's kind of the vision that you have when you think of a successful Williams person, is like they're a doctor, they're a lawyer, they're making so much money on the stock market, or they're running their own nonprofits, which is all amazing stuff. But I think it's easy to fall through the cracks and not think of yourself as being a successful alumnus when you are defending yourself against that kind of idea. So I think success is just being happy with where you are, right? Like, I am a successful person because I have 2 beautiful children. I am really happy in my life. I'm not working, but I'm so happy. I would not change where I am right now. Could I be more successful professionally? Yes, but do I really need to be happy? No.